fertilized embryo is about the size of a single individual grain of sand, about 1 millimeter. But according to the Supreme Court of the great state of Alabama, this grain of sand sized microorganism with no brain, no nervous system, and no capacity for conscious experience is just as much a human being as you or I, and as such is entitled to the same legal protections. Now, if that sounds absurd to you, it's about to become even more absurd because I lied. A human embryo is not the size of a grain of sand. It is literally 10 times smaller than a grain of sand. An average grain of sand is about 1 millimeter in size, while an embryo is 0.1 millimeters. It's invisible to the human eye. It's quite literally a clump of cells. You know, when people talk about, oh, it's not, yeah, this is actually what we're talking about, a literal clump of cells, less than a dozen cells. Now, this ruling from Alabama came from a Supreme Court case in which in vitro fertilization clinic accidentally dropped a container of embryos, and it was sued by the families for wrongful death, like someone died in a car accident or something. Now, at this point, I have to interject that I do feel some sympathy here, a great deal of sympathy, because if you were one of these couples, they're from Alabama, so these children, could have possibly been their siblings too. So that's really
Yeah,
got to
that's
hurt when something
true.
like that happens. That's really got to, sting. But the Republicans are scrambling across the country because they have to defend this obvious and logical extension, of their philosophy that life begins at conception. So just today, when I proposed this story, this hadn't been the case, but just today, the Alabama legislator, and I believe the House and the Senate, passed a bill that would grant legal protections to in vitro fertilization clinics to not be sued for wrongful death, which is exactly what the Alabama Supreme Court says. So it's been really funny over the last few days, honestly. Like, I don't think it's been an entire week or two since this happened to watch Republicans everywhere scramble trying to defend this, because this is obviously what's going to happen. In vitro fertilization clinics are going to pause because they don't want to go to jail because you dropped a petri dish. And just
Mhm.
seeing Republicans like trying to square this circle has been pretty funny. Gage, I'll go throw it to you first, man. What do you think about all this?
Man, I just think it's crazy. And just to build off what you said about a clump of cells, we talked about in our show. To be specific, it is 6 to 10 cells. 6 to 10 cells. They
Wild.
don't have organs, they have organelles, mitochondria, ER, stuff like that. Like there is nothing. It is sure it is the earliest stage of life, but that is not life in the way that you and me think about it colloquially when we are walking around. That is not a living, breathing thing. It's not a person. And it speaks to how even these well-meaning sort of cases, like I get it. I have sympathy for those families, these prospective mothers who have fertilization issues, and they really want to have a kid, being upset that this thing
Of
happened.
course, yeah.
But it speaks to a failure in so many different levers of government that this even went to trial in the first
Wild.
case.
Wild.
Prosecutorial discretion. Like there's so many places where this could have been stopped. It shouldn't have got there. And it speaks to how even just having one far right lunatic in a very high position of power can do massive damage to women's rights as a whole and can cause massive waves across the country. So many people have started to like get worried going through the process of IVF. They're thinking, should I pull out of Florida? Should I stop going to Florida to do this? Should I stop going to whatever red state clinic I've been going to? Should I try and move my eggs to New York because I'm worried that this might happen? I might be in trouble. And it's also the fact that the precedent he won, he cited the Bible, or
Yeah.
one of the chief justice cited the Bible in his concurring opinion, said something about how the wrath of God should be incurred on anyone who desecrates man's image or some bullshit like that. I'm
Wow.
paraphrasing.
Wow.
Paraphrasing. Don't have it exactly right since we recorded our second on this, but it's wild. It's just insane.
Jeremy, your thoughts, man.
I mean, it feels like we're like 2 steps away from masturbation just being illegal, considered murder as well. Like it's just it's crazy to me. That probably wouldn't happen because that would inconvenience men, which isn't the point of rulings like this. But on a more serious note, as you said, TJ, this is the logical
It is.
endpoint of believing life begins at conception. If your moral position, and the position you want to legislate into law, by the way, is that life begins at conception, and any alteration or prevention of that life growing into a fully fledged human being is murder, then this is the policy you have to adopt. And it makes IVF treatment basically impossible because the implication there is that if you form an embryo via IVF, then you have to keep all of them alive. Otherwise, you're murdering something, right? You're committing murder. And it's just it blows my mind that Republicans hold this position that life begins at conception and then get surprised when this is the end result, right? Like, even if you, in good faith, believe that life begins at conception, that is your morally held belief, your goal isn't, at least on its face, to harm women or to take rights away. You literally just believe because of religion or some other reason that life begins at conception. This is where these pro-life policies lead us. And it also brings up all other absurdities, like if you conceive a child or if you have an embryo that's like stored in a freezer somewhere, can you claim them as a dependent on your taxes? If I have 100 frozen embryos in the back of my car, can I drive in the HOV lane on the highway? Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's obviously not a human life. We're not going to start assigning social security numbers to them. All this does is get in the way of a medical practice, IVF, that is actually pretty pro-family. And it's just, again, it's the end result of conservative policies and conservative ideology. It's nonsense.
And that's exactly the point I wanted to make, Jeremy, is that let's look at what the Republicans have done. Like, let's take it seriously and seriously take their words to their logical conclusions. And so they obviously pro-life, life begins at conception. Well, the illogical conclusion of that is if you destroy an embryo, you are killing a baby.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just the logical conclusion. And therefore, yeah, no, you shouldn't be allowed to do that. Okay, cool. Oh, wait, fuck. That means we can't have IVF, and thousands of families or thousands of Americans who couldn't start a family the normal ways. This is their only option to have kids and start a family, which, of course, we Republicans want them to do. And I do too, as well, by the way. But like, that's very much a conservative Republican value. Yeah, they can't do that anymore. It's like, oh, well, fuck. Well, we can't do that, so we'll make an exception. Any doctor performing IVF services, they have immunity in these cases. We will not like walk back the statement that the embryos are a living, breathing human life, but we're going to give IVF doctors a literal license to kill babies according to our own belief system.
You're right.
In order to not have a bad electoral position. Like that is literally what they are saying. Like it doesn't make any logical sense if you take their words literally. Now they completely rely on the fact that their followers won't take their words literally. But when you do, like in a court, it has to.
It doesn't make sense.
That happens.
Yeah, it doesn't. And the legislation that passed today was, I found out, the second draft of the legislation. The first draft said that referred to the embryos as a human life, but they changed it to potential human life because it didn't, because like that's what we've always been saying. Like it says that in the writing, and so like it doesn't make any sense at all. And so I wrote down thinking about this. Listen, I understand why, the forced birth crowd goes with the life begins at conception argument, because it's the easiest one to make. It requires the least amount of thought. It's just that, fertilization, boom, that's when, the human life begins. And like, it's so great that he cited the Bible. I forgot about that. It's so crazy stuff's going on, but he cited the Bible in his ruling because the whole thing focuses on the fact or the idea that that blob of 8 cells has a soul, and the soul is right there. And so the concept of the soul has always been funny to me because there's no real way to explain it. It's not real, but when does the soul come in the body? And so the theory is that at conception the soul is there. Well, at that point the fertilized embryo can split into twins. So what happens to the soul then? Like, do twins have half a soul at that point? Like, does God implant a new soul into one of them? Like, at what point does that start? And it got me thinking too about the potential of human life thing also applies to cloning, because you do not need to produce a human being this way. Cloning is possible. We do it with mice all the time. So like, when we study, the effects of diseases, we use cloned mice because you have a much, better understanding of what all the variables can be. So it can be done to a human being. So if you look at it that way, every single cell in your body, trillions upon trillions of them, is a potential human life. So like every time you sneeze, you are killing potential human beings. It doesn't make any sense at all, but it's just what they have to stick with. And you guys mentioned how most Republicans are fine with IVF. Like but there is a contingent that isn't. And I saw, you guys know who Michael Knowles is from the Daily Show?
am
Did you
so sorry
see-
that I do. Yeah.
Did you see that fucking video? I was blown away. I
Wait, what was it,
couldn't
TJ? I
believe.
hadn't seen it.
Oh my God. So you've got to check it out after the show. He's on there talking about how he thinks IVF is immoral because it goes against like the natural order of procreation, and that we as good, strong conservatives need to do our best to stop. I can't remember the word he used, but it's kind of like how they always use decadence or what's the word they use? Degradation, degeneracy. Like a
Degeneracy,
form of
yeah.
degeneracy. And I was like, man, these like saying mask off is kind of like trite at this point because they've taken off so many masks. There's nothing left. But there's actually a contingency of the right-wing movement that doesn't want IVF. And a lot of it is because gay couples use it and they want to kind of get rid of that too. But, you guys saw it. Like, what did you guys think about that Michael Knowles stuff?
Well, and it's not just gay couples that use it. People that have trouble conceiving will use IVF. Cancer patients will use IVF. Like there's a whole host of people that use IVF. I think Nikki Haley at one point used IVF,
Mike Pence
even though
used it.
even though Nikki Haley came out semi in support of the
I
decision
know.
before walking it back publicly. But I also just wanted to
Does
say,
that a lot,
we're
doesn't she?
we're sort of arguing on their turf here, right? Like
Uh-huh.
trying to point out how either you're inconsistent or you're preventing people from starting families, right? But I just got to say, this idea that it's settled science that life begins at conception is lunacy. It's insane. I mean, one of the most hotly debated philosophical
It's not a scientific
topics of
question.
all time.
Yeah.
One of the most hotly debated philosophical topics of all time is personhood. When someone is a person, what constitutes personhood? Would androids be personhood? Right, like all these kinds of questions. For them to say that it's decided and that we should legislate it into the law is insane. And it is the end result that people don't have access to medical procedures that are pro-family, ostensibly, at least. It's insane to me.
Well, I think what's wrong with a lot of conservatives coming out and saying that life begins at conception and that's why we should do XYZ, just anti-woman policy, is that they're using this definition of life that is fundamentally anti-scientific. Like, yes, life, sure, it does begin at conception, but there was life before that conception as well. A sperm cell is alive, cells are alive. Every cell in your body has the potential to differentiate into any type of cell, into maybe a whole nother human being. There are complex biological reasons why it doesn't, but it's also, there's the fact that you can engage with that statement that life begins at conception. You can say, yeah, sure, like that will eventually grow into a fully fledged human. Like Jeremy said, it's about personhood, though. It's about when you're a person. You can say that life begins at conception, and it would not be morally inconsistent of you to go on and then say that we can assign different levels of moral relevance to different stages of development. We even do it to fully developed humans. An example I bring up all the time when we talk about abortion is how we say that it is okay to pull the plug on someone who's brain dead, or maybe a myriad of other reasons, someone who is in the hospital and you need to pull the plug on them. We do that despite them. Sure, they're a human being, but it's okay. Like, it's okay. No one gets upset at other people for that outside of, rare circumstances, some ignorance, or like some male intent. But it's the same as abortion. You just because something is alive doesn't necessarily means that it holds the same moral significance.
Yeah, I know, and I always love that whenever we talk about abortion, it happens to be one of the weeks we have like dude guests. But we do a very good job of creating a diverse panel of guests of different races, different backgrounds, different genders, whatever. But every time we talk about abortion, it's 3 or 4 dudes,
two cis
just
guys
chatting it out. But like, I mean, I do think that's the important point here, is that like this is a thing that affects everyone. Like if I learn, I don't know, but maybe me and my fiance, like we aren't able to have kids, and then oh shit, if I want kids, I need IVF, but now I can't fucking have it. Like it's just like, it is bad for everyone. These restrictions, it isn't just bad for women, and it's worse for women for sure by a large country mile. But one of the things I don't like about like, oh, this is a women's issue. No, this is an everyone issue. It is an everyone issue. It is going to hurt everyone if we continue down this path. It's going to hurt women way more. But men, you better be fucking scared too. It's all I'm saying, because it is not good for anyone. And the thing, Gage, that you just brought up, how the personhood argument, I don't even give a shit about the personhood argument, because like, I mean, I can make that argument all day. We can go down that train of thought. But even if it is a person, I don't give a shit, because no person has the right to be inside of me. Like, it is
Yeah,
it's
so,
bodily
it is
autonomy.
so, like, no, there's no situation in which you are required to go through anywhere close to the encumbrance on your bodily autonomy to save another human life as you would during pregnancy. If I hit someone with my car, and they're out in the street and like trying to dodge through traffic, I'm not, and it's a total accident, of course, in this situation, I'm not going to have worse consequences if I didn't go out in the street and risk my life to save them. They're not going to force me to do that. If that person needs like a new kidney, like
Yeah.
I'm not going to get like thrown in jail because I refused to give them my kidney. But for some reason, when it's a pregnancy, a woman is expected to give them their entire body for 9 months, incur permanent damage to their body, and by the way, maybe not make it out alive. And also incur thousands of dollars in medical debt in the process. All of that, we just, oh yeah, in order to save the baby's life, you just have to do that. And it's not consistent with any other viewpoint on bodily autonomy or self-defense that conservatives have. Just none of them. It's very upsetting.
And
None of their views on
I
pro-life
know,
policies are
but
consistent. That's the thing.
It's
You know what
true.
I mean?
It's true. But
it's
they argue with so much fucking conviction, and very smart people. That's the thing. Like, very smart people make very intelligent pro-life arguments. I'm just like, but like that doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't make any sense.
It's also important to note, like, when we're talking about IVF, embryos could be destroyed because of human error, right? Somebody drops it. It's not malicious. That kind of just happens. But also a part of IVF is testing embryos for genetic abnormalities. Because these genetic abnormalities could grow into worse problems, complicated pregnancy, even threaten the life of the mother. It's a part of the process. And if we don't let medical experts do their job, as we've been saying ever since Roe v. Wade was overturned, people are going to be hurt, options are going to be limited, and freedoms are going to be taken away. As you said, it hurts everybody involved. There are no good upsides to this. And the fact that they now have to legislate, John, as you said before, that doctors basically have a license to kill according to their ideology, it's all absurd. It's all nonsense. That's why when you side on the pro-choice side of this argument, you're morally consistent through and through. You don't have to dance around and make exceptions in this sort of thing. We just say you get to do what you want with your body. And beyond that, it's not anybody's prerogative to tell you what to do.
Yeah, exactly. When you're pro-choice, you can say you want to carry that baby to term no matter what the circumstances are. You can go ahead and do that. That's fine. It's completely fine. People who are pro-life still fall under the umbrella of me being pro-choice because I think you can do what you want. And it's just so funny how all of these quote unquote pro-life policies just manifest in anti-family outcomes.
All right, so if you're a regular viewer of the show and you regularly make it to the end of the episodes, you know what I'm about to say. This is the part where I tell you to subscribe and like if you haven't already, and tell you that we appreciate you for making it this far, because it's true. We really do. It helps out the algorithm a bunch. What also helps out the algorithm is having excellent guests like our wonderful guest today, who I won't even tell you who they are. If you guys don't know, they can tell you. Jeremy, who the hell are you? Where can people find you?
I'm Jeremy. This is Gage somewhere on the screen.
Woo,
I don't know, somewhere
right
around here. We're from Head in the Office. You can just look us up on any platform, Head in the Office. We're on TikTok. That's our most prominent platform. YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can find us just about everywhere. We post clips. We post full episodes on various platforms. Head in the Office, all platforms.
It's a great time. I highly recommend the show.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. We appreciate it. We appreciate you guys watching as well. You've had this great opportunity to watch 4 incredibly intelligent and articulate and handsome men. One is a little more, handsome than the others. I won't say, but check out the Head in the Office podcast. We really recommend it. And if you're wondering what Head in the Office stands for, it doesn't stand for that. You freaking perv. Stop it. Just go ahead and watch the show. You'll enjoy it. I promise.